Welcome into the Triple Threat Show. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus, joined today by my friend and co-host, Mayrob Fatemi here. How are you doing on this fine Wednesday, July 16th?
How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk some sports with you here today, Mayrob. There's a lot to get into. We're going to start off in the NBA, where one of the moves that had kind of been hinted at or prepared at all summer long finally took place. Bradley Beal was officially bought out by the Phoenix Suns and moves over a couple cities to LA, joining James Harden and Kawhi Leonard over there to form the next big three in the NBA. This one is a really interesting fit. Obviously, his big three over with the Suns, with Booker and KD, went about as disastrously as it possibly could, and it's left not a great taste in and everybody's mouths surrounding Beal. Maybe that's even an understatement right there. But he's a guy that can come in and still be a very, very effective scorer. They just had too many guys that play that Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant scorer role on that Phoenix Suns team. I think the pairing of him and James Harden is going to be a little bit interesting, and maybe Beal's learned to be off the ball a little bit more. 17 points per game with the Phoenix Suns last season when he was healthy. Also, another thing to be cautious of when we're talking about a guy like Bradley Beal. His health hasn't necessarily been the best. But what do you make of this pairing as a team in LA that I thought was a dark horse in the West last year?
Yeah, well, to go after this, we have to kind of rewind the clock to during the middle of the season. Mid-season, people were already bringing up if Bradley Beal would be on the hot seat. And the one thing that everyone pointed out was that he had a no trade clause, that he would have to decide where he would go. And for the longest time, Bradley Beal says, I like Phoenix. I want to stay here. I want to continue to play here and finish my career here. That was said throughout after the trade deadline, even into the early parts of the offseason here in the NBA. But something's taken a little bit of a turn here. Even Shams said it. It felt like Beal and his representative found a little bit of excitement here in this buyout to LA, moving him away from Phoenix. KD gets traded a couple weeks ago to Houston. He is now deciding to leave to go to LA. And honestly, I think it's an underrated move here. If there's a team that can figure out the James Harden issue that had been an issue for 5, 6 years, from the days with the Nets to the days with the Sixers, to him going into LA last year and having such a comeback year, looking like his old Houston Rockets prime self, what is he going to do with a broken Bradley Beal? What has he done with a broken Kawhi Leonard? This is a guy, a veteran head coach, one of the best head coaches of all time, I'd say, easily in the conversation, that is kind of continuing to build his legacy here in LA. If he can do this with Bradley Beal and can make some noise with the LA Clippers, that he has some pieces there. The problem is there's some hidden gems, and it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of effort to turn this team around. But if there's a guy that can do it, it's Ty Lue.
Yeah, this is a really interesting fit in LA with the Clippers, right? You have a Clippers team that's gone out and made some moves. They were a 4 seed in the West last year, and they took the Nuggets to a really, really competitive 7 games in the first round. They're still near the top in the NBA. They move off of Norman Powell, but they get all of that offensive production back in a move getting Beal. And most importantly, it is so much cheaper for them. 2 years, $11 million for Beal. That is almost no risk at all for a guy that, like we were saying, shoots just about 58% from the field, shoots just about 40% from three. That is still remarkable for a guy in Beal. You brought up injury concerns. That's going to be the big concern with this team. But swapping out just in general a guy like Norm Powell, who was sitting right around those high teens, low 20s points per game, you get a guy in John Collins back in that trade to help shore up the defense a little bit down low with Zubac. And you add Beal to effectively just replace him as a scorer right there. You're replacing in the aggregate, but it's already cheaper than what they had. And I think they've made themselves into a real contender out west. You have over in the Western Conference, obviously, a lot of great teams. The defending champions in the Thunder, the Nuggets, who I think got a lot better this offseason as well. The Rockets got a lot better this offseason. But the Clippers should be right up there in that conversation as a top four, pretty clear, I think, top four team in the West, especially if they can stay healthy. But that's going to be the big question as we take a look going forward into this season for Ty Lue, Bradley Beal, and the rest of this big three in LA.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm ready to say they're top four, but I definitely say that they're playoff. They've made themselves a playoff team. This was an interesting move, and this is a quiet Clippers team. This is a team that has not made a lot of noise, that's been really sneaky with their moves this offseason, making a lot of quiet moves. Like you said, Norman Powell, that was a very quiet move. And even I was a little bit worried about that. A guy, Norman Powell, who can easily be a six man of the year whenever he wants to be. He's still a great player coming off the bench. You pretty much replace that. You get pieces back from Norman Powell, and then you bring in a pretty much an older copy version that has a little bit higher upside in Bradley Beal, who can be more efficient, who can catch fire whenever he wants. He's easily a harder shooter than Norman Powell. Definitely not on the defensive end, but I think this is a great move. You bring John Collins, you have draft picks now, you have pieces around a whatever you want to call a core of Kawhi Leonard and James Harden. You can call them old, you can call them washed up, whatever you want to call them. But there is a nucleus there in LA. It just depends on how long they can stay healthy and how long they can keep it together. But if all goes well, if nobody gets hurt, this is a team that will be a dark horse for sure in the Western Conference next year in the NBA.
Yeah, health, of course, is that big concern. All three of these stars are injury prone, have dealt with major injuries throughout their career, throughout recent memory. Beal and Kawhi having struggles staying on the court, James Harden going through his fair share of injuries, and of course his playoff struggles. But now you get the opportunity for all three of these guys to go out their last couple of seasons here until 2027. That's when this core is going to run out. Beal signing a 2-year deal here goes until that 2027 timeline, right? You have Harden and Kawhi with both of their contracts expiring on that 2027 deadline. Everything for the Clippers is leading up to that year. They're going to go on a little mini all-in push with this trio and then reevaluate at that point. But I like what this Clippers team has done a lot. I really do. They were a team that I thought was not going to work out last season, but everything went right for them in that new arena that they had. And I think there's no reason, as the 4 seed last year, I think they got better in the West. I know a lot of other teams got better in the West as well, but we're talking about only one. The Lakers were the seed ahead of them. I think they're better than the Lakers right now. The Nuggets were the 5 seed behind them. Nuggets probably were right on that same level, and they've gotten better. But I still think they're pretty clearly in that top 4. I understand where you're coming from, a very, very, very deep Western Conference, but it's going to be really interesting to see how this older Clippers roster goes when we're comparing it, especially the young guys in the Rockets and the Thunder as they look to start or add to what could be a little bit of a dynasty over there in OKC.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's going to be the old versus the young here. You have the old gen with LeBron, Steph, KD, Kawhi, and the Clippers versus the new generation, the Spurs, the Mavericks, the Nuggets, the Thunder, all across the board. This is what it's going to be. This is the coming of the new generation versus the old.
Yeah.
Just what's going on in the NBA right now.
Absolutely. But that is a lot of what's going on with the NBA right there. We'll keep you updated as Bradley Beal finds a new home with the Clippers here, but we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to the NFL. The NFL is not, of course, quiet. Camps are starting to the NFL training camps are starting up just about now. There's some big stories with some wide receiver holdouts. We'll talk about that and what's going on with Shemar Stewart coming up next here on the Triple Threat Show. Welcome back to the Triple Threat Show. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus, joined today by my friend and co-host, Mayrob Vetemi here. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over Bradley Beal. He got bought out from the Phoenix Suns, goes and joins the Clippers, a transaction that in total is going to lose him $2 million, but he gets to play for a contender now, something that he wants to do. He joins a little bit of a big three over there in the twilight years of all of those three guys' career. In this segment, we turn our attention over to what's going on in the NFL. We're going to start out with some holdout situations here, as Shemar Stewart is just yet again one of the more intriguing cases in NFL history of NFL draft picks. We were talking a little bit over the break about this. This is an unprecedented situation. We obviously know that Shemar Stewart, most recently drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals in the top 16 of the 2025 NFL draft. Shemar Stewart was a freak athlete, showing up at the combine over there and killing it with his athletic measurements, but didn't really put up the greatest amount of production in the SEC with Texas A&M over his career. The Bengals go and draft him, and the first big sign of trouble in paradise over there for him has to do with the language in the contract, and this is where they've been stuck. The Bengals want to put language in the contract that allows them to void future guaranteed money, basically taking away guaranteed money. We've seen the second round picks hold out here because they want fully guaranteed money, and this first rounder is looking for a way to just make sure his guaranteed money is guaranteed, which seems like a no-brainer over there, but the Bengals, they don't want to move an inch on this. So now we're weighing his options. And one of the options that I thought was kind of far-fetched, but is seeming more likely, is for him to re-enter college and redeclare for the draft in 2026. Now that would make him eligible to be drafted by every single team other than the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a really intriguing situation. Mayrob, what's your take on this? How do you see it going, and what's the resolution look like at the end of the day?
This is an unprecedented situation in the NFL right now with Shemar Stewart. This is a player. This is kind of we touched on this on Monday in our show, but this is just the new age of the NFL where unfortunately it had to be with a team like the Bengals who are notorious with their financial, let's call it stinginess, where they just simply don't pay their players accordingly. And yes, this is something that a lot of people, you and I included, saw coming when they paid T. Higgins that extra guaranteed money, when they paid that big three of the offense in Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins the $200+ million a contract. It just doesn't make sense. At some point, you run out of money, and this is what they're doing. They realize they made an oops. I don't have enough money. I just don't have enough money. I got to try and cut corners here. It just doesn't make sense. It does not make sense. If you look at it, this is just a draft pick. This is a young player that's just entering the NFL, just trying to have some guaranteed dollars, just in case something goes wrong, an injury. The team tries to cut him. They can't just take his money. They can't just take his talents and say we're just not going to pay you. That's what this comes down to when you take all the big words out of it. So, if you're the Bengals, just pay him. If you're Shemar Stewart, you have to understand, you have to feel for him, and this would be shocking if we see a player. We haven't seen something like this since the 1940s, 1930s, before the NFL merger. There is no news out there. There is no news out there of a player that's been drafted and going back to college. Not in the historical books. It's just unprecedented.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that why this is so important is precedent. Precedent in a league where you are constantly being compared contractually to your peers is so important. We've seen it really stand out with the second rounders in this year's draft. 30 of 32 remain unsigned, all because the Texans and the Browns gave one of their two second round picks fully guaranteed contracts. Now, that is something, as we've seen precedents, now the other agents, the other players can say, hey, This guy got a fully guaranteed contract. We want a fully guaranteed contract. If this precedent is set that the Cincinnati Bengals are trying to do to take out a future guarantee money to void it if something happens, not only is that going to affect every draft pick in the history of the NFL, but it is going to affect every contract in the history of the NFL. The NFL, if they see players are okay and with signing something like this in their contracts, every single contract is going to have some kind of language. It's going to start a trend. This is more than a holdout for just some Shemar Stewart. This is more than a holdout for just the rookies. This is a holdout for everybody in the NFL as they try to, get as much money as they possibly can in the short time that they can play this sport at such a high level. Now, as far as him going back to school, I think it's honestly a good thing for him. He is a guy like that we talked about, said was not the greatest in terms of production in his career at Texas A&M. He's a guy that struggled to get into the backfield and get sacks over there with that SEC offensive lineman going against him. He is undoubtedly elite as an athlete. Undoubtedly. You've seen all his measurements, you watch how he plays on the field, but more time to cook in the oven could not hurt him at all. He's going to be able to get a massive NIL payday, going to be able to make millions of dollars with everything that's going on over there. You have a real guy that's been drafted, has come back, and then he's going to find himself most likely in the first round again, although this year's draft, there's a lot of quarterbacks that'll go in the first round, so I don't know where he'll end up going. If it's even going to be Texas A&M, he still needs to apply for a waiver with the NCAA, and that one I'm really curious of how they would handle. I don't know why they wouldn't grant him a year here, but that is something that we're going to have to see if it gets that far. He has reportedly been practicing with the team there. Your thoughts, Rob?
Yeah. If there have been rumors that he's been practicing with the Texas A&M Aggies, and there have been some. He has come out and said that it's not true, but nonetheless, this is what happens in the NFL. And this is a young player just trying to chase his dream. If the Bengals aren't going to let it happen, he'll go back to college football, and that is where the money is these days. A lot of these players are making a lot of money in the NIL system, especially in football. I think it's a no-brainer for him if he doesn't get the money from the Bengals, because it cannot hurt him. No way.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's not just Shemar Stewart that is holding out. We brought up the all of the second round picks that are holding up as well. There's a couple wide receivers, veteran wide receivers that are looking to get paid. The most well known of which, a guy over my shoulder here, Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin is going to be 30 this season. He's entering his age 30 season, but he is a borderline top 10 wide receiver. We made our wide receiver list on Monday. Go check that out if you haven't seen it. Terry McLaurin is in that 11 to 16 range for me when it comes to wide receivers in that honorable mention category. He and the way that he tracks the ball is amazing. He's looking to get a new contract with the Washington Commanders, and he has stuck through it all, through the Dan Snyder years, through the Ron Rivera years, through the bad, the ugly, and now he's here for the good. This is the first time that he's had any kind of success as a team in his career, and he is the quintessential guy in that locker room. Everybody loves him. Every media member in DC is a big fan of him, the way that he carries himself. He's a leader more than anything in that locker room as well, with such a young team, and he's just the best wide receiver on the team, point blank period, right? He is a borderline top 10 guy, but the newest piece of news coming out of Washington is that he's unhappy. He very clearly said, I'm not ready to specify a trade, to ask for a trade, but we're getting to the point where it's crunch time now. We're about to report for training camp, and if we get to that point, then it doesn't seem like they really want me here. He said, I want to finish out my career here in Washington, but he is unhappy. They haven't talked to him or his agent in over a month. Basically, the entire time that this whole thing has been developing, and we thought they were having contract discussions, they have not talked once. This sounds like something that's been going on with the Bengals. It sounds like something that went on with the 49ers last offseason. The Commanders have cash to spend on a guy like Terry. Why aren't they talking, and what do you make of this situation in the nation's capital?
This is another one of those situations going on in the NFL, and it's kind of the turn of the tide with a lot of this going to saving money for other contracts, quarterback contracts. In in Cincinnati, it was the Joe Burrow contract. It was the offense. In Washington, we'll get to it, but this is a guy in Terry McLaurin who's, like you said, a top 10 receiver, easily the best receiver on the team. And they try to bring in a guy in Debo Samuel, whether or not they're trying to look at it as a replacement situation, that's yet to be seen. This is a Debo Samuel that hasn't really touched the field in the last 36 months at least. He's There's no replacement for Terry McLaurin on the Washington Commanders. One of those guys that you never saw would leave, has been there for 7 years or plus now. He's the heart and soul of the team. He was there from the dog days to now. They just made the NFC Championship game. But what the Washington Commanders are trying to do is trying to save money for a possible $100 million contract down the road in 2 years for Jaden Daniels. That is the projected money going on in the NFL right now. And this is what we're saying. This is why we're saying that a lot of these holdouts are money holdouts. They're being held out either because of past mistakes, overpays, or soon to be high paying contracts. That's just the name of the game right now. That is what's going on in Washington. That's what's going on in Cincinnati. And this is an even worse situation, in my opinion, than Shemar Stewart. At least Terry McLaurin has proved himself on the field, has proved himself how loyal he is to this fan base, how much he even says that the team hasn't contacted him for a month, and he still says, I want to stay. He's trying to continuously send messages to the front office. Is it going to get through is the question. I hope so, because I love to see Terry McLaurin in a Washington uniform, but we might be having a whole different discussion very soon, especially if he comes out in a press conference and says, I'm ready, either pay me or trade me at this point.
Yeah, there is going to be a lot of teams looking for a guy like Terry McLaurin's services. I've seen numbers for Jaden Daniel, and I've heard people talk about where that number might be. It's probably going to be somewhere in the range of 65 to 70 million dollars is when he's up for his contract. Right now Dak has the record at 60 million dollars. That seems to be a hard number that teams aren't really quite ready to cross at this point, but for a top 5-ish quarterback, Jaden Daniels is going to cross that mark that is set by Dak Prescott right now when it's his turn to make the money. But at that point, we've seen the salary cap explode over the last couple years, right? When we were talking about this before, just 5-10 years ago, actually 5 years ago, Eli Manning was one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league, sitting at $25 million, right, a year. That is how much it has grown exponentially the last couple years, the salary cap especially, and quarterback contracts. I think we're going to start to see, as that salary cap grows, this contract won't be an issue. You pay Terry McLaurin $30 million for the next 3 seasons, right? That's going to line up with what's going on with this. But that could be another thing that they're talking about. Maybe they don't want to give him that extra year because it is an extension. There's a lot of ways that this goes poorly for McLaurin a little bit older, but he's a guy that deserves a contract, if not just because of what he can do on the field, but what he means to that team and the Washington, D.C. area and Commanders fans off of the field as well. The other big piece of wide receiver news, Juwan Jennings. We've seen wide receiver drama. It seems like clockwork in San Francisco. Jennings signed a 2-year contract extension worth $7.5 million a year at the beginning of last offseason, and he really showed up. He's a guy that had a huge game in the Super Bowl, but he's always kind of been that next guy up for the 49ers. But now that Debo is gone, now that Brandon Ayuk is coming off of a pretty devastating injury after getting paid, Ricky Pearsall hasn't really touched the field. Juwan Jennings is the only guy that I can confidently look at and say is going to be a threat offensively for the 49ers in that wide receiver room. He wants to get paid for it. Now, I don't think he's looking like Brandon Ayuk to get $30 million, but a pay raise from $7 to $20 million could be in the cards. But like you were saying, money comes due. It's time to pay the piper over in San Francisco right now when they gave out that massive contract to Brock Purdy earlier this offseason. He, unlike Terry McLaurin, has specifically said, sign me or trade me. He's a guy that I think is one of the more underrated wide receivers in the league in Juwan Jennings. He's someone that I don't think you're going to get too much in the trade market for, but at $7.5 million, I think a team could swallow that price and give him a bit of an extension. Where's some landing spots for a guy like Jennings, and and how do you think this kind of plays out here for the 49ers?
Well, I think they're gonna definitely need to pay him or trade him because this is a guy in Juwan Jennings who's just getting into the prime of his career. A very young player, has a ton of upside on him. This is a guy that a lot of teams are going. The second he said pay me or trade me, I guarantee you the 49ers phone started ringing with teams asking for his services. Who would want him? I mean, if you're looking at Jawan Jennings, a big time frame, muscular dude, can go up for balls whenever he wants, can climb the ladder, and an athletic freak. I mean, the first team that comes to mind is definitely Dallas to be across from CeeDee Lamb. I think that would be a phenomenal move. Keep him as a deep wideout with CeeDee Lamb on the other side. There's a bunch of teams. I definitely think he would go to a contender type team. But Jawan Jennings, a lot of teams would love him. He's not DK Metcalf-esque. He's DK Metcalf-esque, but he's not DK Metcalf. He's a tier below that. That's pretty much where I would put Jawan Johnson or Jennings. Excuse me. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of ways that this goes. I think you bring up a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers. They need a wide receiver, and they've kind of gone all in. I don't know how much it's going to cost to trade for yet another wide receiver from the NFC West, but if you can get him for a third-round pick, I say do it, honestly. A young guy that you can help build that core around, pair him next to DK Metcalf with Aaron Rodgers there. A lot of good can happen over in Pittsburgh. That's one of the teams I would expect, and maybe New England as well to get in on it. Kind of the same suitors that we were talking about for Brandon Ayuk. But outside of that, in the NFL, training camps start up soon. We've seen our first holdout of the second round picks, and I know we touched on this a little bit here. Trey Harris of the Los Angeles Chargers is the first real holdout when it comes to those second round picks, as the Chargers minicamp has officially started. How long do you think this lasts, this second round holdout? Is this something that teams should be concerned about, or are the players just going to give in eventually?
This is definitely a big time concern. I'm I hope it's not like this, but I have a bad feeling NFL teams are going to start playing the copycat role of the Bengals, of the other, like you said, 30 of 32 teams have not paid their second round picks, have not given them fully guaranteed contracts. I know it's not a normal thing to happen, but at some point or another, it seems like something's got to break. Either they're going to make second round picks fully guaranteed contracts, or we're going to start seeing a lot of guys either going back to college or whatnot. There's going to be some sort of dispute. I just have a feeling that it's going to, this is just part of what I've said before, that this is a part of teams just trying to cut corners to pay their other guys more money as the salary cap continues to inflate. I think that's just going to be, that's the larger issue that we have, that's kind of looming in the background, that I don't know how it's going to continue to affect the NFL.
I mean, that's just how it goes. Anytime there's contracts, the owners want to pay you as little money as possible, and the players want to be paid as much money as possible. It's very opposite approaches. That's why you have to compromise. That's why you have to negotiate these contracts. But the owners have a lot more leverage, especially in this situation. These are all kids that have yet to sign with a team. They don't have that security. They're drafted. They're a member of those teams in name only, right? Those teams have the rights to them, but they're not. If they don't sign them, they don't sign them. Nobody else can until next season, or until that their rights go away in a couple of years, depending on how this resolution goes with Shemar Stewart. And maybe we do see a couple guys go back to college, but I also honestly doubt that we do. I think that's going to be reserved for a very select few guys that still, you know, have that connection, have that ability to go back in and play more college football. I think you see a lot of guys go overseas, but I don't know how long they can really last. They have no leverage, the second round picks do. They don't have that big money pile to fall back on. They need to go and start their career. The longer they wait, more money they're throwing away. And you can wait a little bit in the offseason. They can't get fined because they're not under contract at all. But this hurts them in the long run more than anything and their NFL career because they have to get, into camp. They have to compete for their spot, compete for playing time, show that they belong and everything. And I know Trey Harris is a guy that's going to have a spot with the way that wide receiver room looks in LA, but not getting on the same page as Justin Herbert early could lose you out some touches and some routes and some plays over there, some spots on the depth chart. And that's not an easy thing to recover from. The rookies are kind of in a situation where they need to get out there and they need to be practicing with their new teammates and getting that chemistry. I feel like something's going to give and the owners are going to win out in this one rather than the Shemar Stewart situation where he's going to win out there. I am an advocate, I will say, for the NFL to go to fully guaranteed contracts for everyone, but that is way too radical for the owners in a game where they win every single time, and their goal is to pay as little money as possible while still fielding a good team. But there are a lot more things to come out of the NFL in the future here. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention over to baseball. The All-Star festivities have wrapped up. An amazing All-Star game that took place ended in a swing off, a little mini home run derby. Should that be extra innings in the future? We'll talk about that and much more coming up next here on the Triple Threat Show. Welcome back to the Triple Threat Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus, today joined by my friend and co-host, Mayrob Fitemi over there. If you're just tuning in, We just finished going over everything you need to know about holdouts in the world of football. Training camp are starting in the NFL. The Chargers have already reported we're going to start to see a lot more holdout talks as the summer gets deeper. Less than 50 days to NFL kickoff. But it was also the Midsummer Classic this week. The MLB All-Star Weekend and their festivities went off, and I have to say that might have been the best All-Star game I have ever seen in my entire life. When we're talking about that, the NL opens up to a 6-0 lead early on, behind a double from Ketel Marte in the first inning off of Tariq Skubal, a couple home runs, a 3-run jack from Pete Alonso. He looked like he was in the driver's seat for the MVP. But then the AL starts to come back. They eventually tie it with an infield single in the ninth inning, 2 outs to go. Steven Kwan gets that game-tying RBI. Effort in the All-Star game is really cool to see, and it goes to extras here. And this was one of the best moments of this base in recent baseball memory. They went to a little swing off. Each side designated 3 batters. The NL brought up the AL brought up Randy Arozarena. They brought up Matt Olson, and they brought off Aranda from the Rays as well. While the NL brought up Kyle Stowers, and Pete Alonso was their cleanup hitter over there. He was going to finish him out with Kyle Schwarber is the guy to be setting up for that final round, but it never got to Pete Alonso. The first round, we saw Brent Rooker hit 2 home runs in 3 swings, an incredible feat to do already. High pressure moment, giving them a little bit of a lead. Stowers made it 2-1 after putting one into the outfield seats just barely. But then we saw Randy Arozarena again put 2 more up, put just 1 more up, making it 3-1 AL with Kyle Schwarber. And if you know anything about Kyle Schwarber, it's that he hits dingers. That's what he does. He hit 3 home runs on 3 swings where Jose Aranda could not get 1 out, and the NL got the win. MVP was named Kyle Schwarber over there, and it was one of the more impressive things I have seen an All-Star game, not just the MLB All-Star game, do in a very long time. We've had a lot of successful All-Star game formats. The Hockey All-Star festivities with the Four Nations Cup went really well, and now what's going on here in baseball, now that happened in the 9th inning over there, but that was amazing. That is one of those things that got the fans going. It was healthy for the game, and also the home run derby is maybe the best way to settle a tie ever. I love a good extra innings game, the stakes over there, but the stakes are just as high when a guy gets 3 swings. This is not something we're going to see, but it is a place in the All-Star game where they test out a lot of rules. They tested out the automatic ball strike challenge system. We saw Tariq Skubal challenge and get a ball called for him. A ball that was called a ball became a strike in that first inning, and that was really cool to see the future of how that's going to work. But is this something we could see as the future of extra innings in a world where baseball is looking for any sort of excitement there, a little bit of a home run derby off to decide those games, especially in the regular season, kind of like what hockey does in shootouts, which I know is a little bit unpopular over there on the ice. But what do you think of that in the world of baseball?
I think it's really interesting. Honestly, um, I think bringing some sort of hype around the All-Star games in any major league is really important. Bring all the best players across the league together to compete on one stage. Sounds like it would be a grand plan. But the problem is a lot of players are looking out for their bodies, looking out to stay healthy, making sure they don't get injured. This, that, and the other. And you have to understand it. It's a big issue in the NFL and NBA. But the way that the NHL was able to break that tradition, the way that they came out with the Four Nations Cup this year and put on an absolute show, and then to follow that up with the way that the MLB did just now, it's a big move for both of those leagues, and it puts pressure on the NBA and NFL to continue to step up their product as well. So I think this all around works really well. But in terms of the MLB, we got to see Kyle Schwarber. He had a phenomenal MVP game. Cal Raleigh won the home run derby. I know there are some thoughts around how the home run derby ended up finishing out, but it was a phenomenal one. It was a phenomenal All-Star weekend, and especially in the summer when there's not a lot of sports on, it's really good to see the MLB continuing to draw attention and keeping the world of sports alive, even in the dog days of the summer.
Yeah, you bring up the home run derby, and that had mixed reviews. One of the big issues with it, one of the big controversies, I should say, with it, had to do with the first round between eventual champion Cal Raleigh, the big dumper over there, and Matt Olson, or not Matt Olson, excuse me, and God, Brent Rooker. Brent Rooker and Cal Raleigh both hit 17 home runs in the first round. And the tiebreaker usually would have gone to a swing off, like we saw in the All-Star game between the two hitters, and they would each get three swings to hit the most home runs. But instead, tied at the same distance of 471 feet, they broke out their high analytics computers and they were able to calculate it down to the 10th decimal point to decide that the home run hit from Cal Raleigh was zero point 0.1 of a foot longer than the home run hit by Brent Rooker. Just a brutal way to go out there and not a great way for fans to enjoy it. But one of the big takeaways from me from that game, from the home run derby at least, is that I don't like the way that it's done now. I think the out system that they used to do, they switched it to a timer system, but now you can't watch the home runs. Now they have a split screen where they barely show the home runs because the pitcher just has to keep throwing the baseball. You only have so many throws, you only have so much time, a couple minutes, 3 minutes in the last two rounds once you get to the semifinals and the finals. But you just kind of don't get to watch these balls fly, which is why you're there, why you're watching the home run derby, why you put it on, why it's a real thing, because you want to see these big swings and you want to see how far it can go. You want to appreciate it. 10 outs is the way they used to do it up until 2016 when they changed it to this new system. But they added that bonus system where they went back to outs, and that was always the most intriguing part of it. That was the point where you could watch them. You could watch the players wait for their pitch. They got the ones that they wanted, and it was to save time. I understand, but I think that out system makes for so much of a better product. You can still get all your StatCast stuff in there. You have time to talk about the home runs and what they've hit for a little bit. I really like that format. I think they should go back there. But do you have any gripes about anything in the All-Star festivities in Atlanta in 2025?
I think it was. I think I'm right there with you with the home run derby. The zero point 0.1 of a foot is just what our generation calls diabolical these days for something to be called. That was an egregious call, something you don't really see these days in any sport. To be finished that way is a little bit of a bummer, but it was still a very entertaining weekend. And like I said, this continues to put pressure on the NBA and NFL to continue to improve their products, who have been really, really lacking as of late, and makes sports really that much more enjoyable during this time of year. So it's a win-win, really.
As we look towards the future, the All-Star game in our rearview windows now, the second half of the baseball season is set to begin. And before we send you guys off into the night here on a beautiful Wednesday, July 16th, we're going to talk a little bit about the second half of baseball. There are a lot of teams that are hot at this break, but who are the ones that are going to step up and make that surprise run into the playoffs or maybe through the playoffs here? I mean, Rob, we'll start with you on here. Who are a couple teams or one team that kind of sticks out to you as your second half sweetheart in baseball this summer?
See, I know exactly why you pointed at me, and you could see them right over my left shoulder here, on the flag. I'm talking about the Boston Red Sox. The Boston Red Sox, who are on a 10-game win streak. The Boston Red Sox, who have turned their season around, even when I crucified them after they traded Rafael Devers. A team that's really turned it around on all levels, and they get Alex Bregman back. They're getting all their guys healthy once again. This looks like a season that the Red Sox are about to take over. However, with all that being said, they do have the hardest ranked schedule in the second half of the season coming up. And they do have some powerhouses over the next 3 weeks. So it's going to depend on how everything shakes out. I think they need to come out of if they can come out of these next three series with a 2-1, 1-2 series split, I think they'll be okay. But it's all going to be ifs. It's all ifs and buts until we see how this team does. But they're definitely them and the Brewers are my two teams to go on a big run here in the second half of the season.
Yeah, the red hot Red Sox over there, 10 straight wins for them. They've been really solid, especially after moving off of Rafael Devers. It's worked wonders for them, which is crazy. I know there was a bit of a logjam for playing time there, and maybe that helped loosen up the environment in the clubhouse a bit, but still, generally trading away one of your best hitters for table scraps doesn't work out as well, and we'll have to see if that's continuous for them. The Brewers, you bring up as well. Another team that's just as hot. 7 straight wins for them. They are a team that has a lot of good things going. The bats are showing up. Jacob Mizorowski has been the next coming of Paul Skeens already through just 5 starts. It is a really fun team to watch over in the NL. But there's a couple teams to watch that aren't yet in the wild card. Red Sox have that wild card 2, a game behind the Yankees, and the Brewers have that wild card 1 in the NL, up 4 games on the Padres and 1.5 on the Mets. But a team that I think could find a way into the playoffs with a hot second half. How about the Cincinnati Reds? They're a team that I've been waiting on that big breakout for a while. Ellie De La Cruz continues to not disappoint with what he has been doing for this team, both offensively and defensively. Matt McLain is back. He's going to be huge for them. They have a lot of great pitchers as well that are waiting to go, and a lot of that team is very, very young. I love this Reds team. I have a soft spot for them, or I've had a soft spot for them for a very long time, sitting just 2.5 games back of that final playoff spot held by the Padres right now. 50 wins at the half. I think this is a team that is that dark horse to make a run and maybe steal a playoff spot from one of these teams in the NL. In the AL, a team I look at that could hold that, it's the Tampa Bay Rays. And that might be a little bit of a cop-out answer, but they always seem to find a way. This Rays team does. They had a lot of all-stars. Junior Caminero showed up in the home run derby, taking him all the way to the finals, falling by just a couple home runs to the big dumper. You have Jose Aranda, who should have been the all-star starter at first base with the Tampa Bay Rays. They also have won 50 games. They're just 1.5 games back of the Mariners, a team that I think needs to make a big move at the deadline if they want to keep where they're at. As good as Cal Raleigh has been, he has been really the only consistent piece of offense. That pitching staff has been amazing as always, but they need to go out and get a little bit more in that bats department. Julio Rodriguez needs to step it up a little more, and I think that's going to be the race to watch between the Rays and the Mariners here. Shout out to the Rangers. I like this team a lot, but they haven't really been clicking. They're still in it if they can turn it around quickly. 3.5 games back of that final wild card spot currently held by the Mariners. Those are a couple teams that I'm looking at as dark horse candidates. Those are my sweethearts heading into the second half of the season.
Yep, right there with you. I think don't count out of the Angels as well. I think the Angels have had a little bit of a great season so far. Great season to their standards. If they can continue to piece together wins, do not be shocked if they can find themselves in that last wild card spot as well, just 2 games back from that 500 mark.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot to take care of. The trade deadline right around the corner. We will talk about that tomorrow. A couple of players that could be traded, or not tomorrow, on Friday when we're back. A couple players that could be traded, a couple players that might be on the block but won't be moved at all. We'll do trade or stay in the MLB, as well as keeping you up to date with every other thing going on around the world of sports. But thank you everybody so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Triple Threat Show live on YouTube at Triple Threat Show and on Twitch at 3 Threat Show. You can also find us short form content everywhere. TikTok at _the Triple Threat Show, on Instagram at 3 Threat Show _. You can find us again on YouTube at Triple Threat Show, and anywhere that you get your podcasts. We are Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcast, Amazon Podcast, anywhere you go check us out. Give us a follow over there. We really appreciate it. But we will be back on Friday, giving you all of the newest news from around the world of sports. We'll see you then. Bye bye.